What if I told you that the greatest debate in the history of sports doesn't have a clean answer, and never will, and the moment you think you've settled it, one more statue, one more trophy, one more left career, miracle flips the whole argument upside down again. Two men, 2 decades, one relentless, era-defining rivalry that turned football into something closer to religion. And tonight, we are not just going to compare numbers. We are going to dig into exactly why those numbers exist, what they reveal about how these two men were built, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand something that most fans get completely wrong about the Messi versus Ronaldo debate. Because here's the twist, nobody talks about the player with more goals is not necessarily the better player, and the player with more assists is not necessarily the more valuable one either. It's cheeky with me because the way this story ends might genuinely surprise you. Before we go further, if you're someone who lives for football breakdowns like this one, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the like, because here on Go Verdict, we don't just give you stats, we give you the story behind the stats, the analysis nobody else bothers to explain, and match predictions that actually make sense before kickoff. Okay, let's get into it, because this comparison goes a lot deeper than most people realize. Let's start with the number everyone obsesses over. First, total career goals. As it stands in 2026, Cristiano Ronaldo sits at roughly 970-plus career goals for club and country, a number that has made him the single highest-scoring player in the recorded history of the sport. Lionel Messi trails him slightly, sitting in the range of 900 to 920 goals. On the surface, that gap looks like it settles the argument right there. Ronaldo scores more. Case closed. Right. Except it isn't that simple. And here's why. Ronaldo has played significantly more matches than Messi over the course of his career, well over 1,300 appearances compared to Messi's total sitting closer to 1,160. That means when you strip away the raw totals and look at efficiency, Messi actually scores at a higher rate per match than Ronaldo does. Messi is averaging somewhere around 0.79 goals per game, while Ronaldo sits closer to 0.73. It's a small gap on paper, but across more than 1,000 matches, that difference compounds into something meaningful. So already, we have our first curiosity loop, because the man with fewer total goals might actually be the more clinical finisher on a per-game basis. Keep that in mind, because it's going to matter again later. Now let's talk about something Ronaldo almost never gets enough credit for: longevity. This man is currently in his 40s and he's still scoring goals in the Saudi Pro League, still training like a machine, still breaking records that most players couldn't touch in their physical prime, let alone in their late 30s. That kind of sustained output over more than 2 decades at the elite level is almost unheard of in professional football. Messi, meanwhile, is still performing at a very high level himself with Inter Miami, but the conversation around Ronaldo's longevity, specifically his ability to keep his body in peak condition well past the age most players retire, is one of the most underrated parts of his entire legacy. And that leads us into something most fans completely overlook when they talk about these two: the way they actually play the game. Messi is the game's greatest playmaker, as much as he is a scorer. His career assist numbers are genuinely staggering, sitting somewhere between 380 and 450 depending on which counting method you use, which puts him significantly ahead of Ronaldo, whose assist total sits closer to 260 to 300 across his career. That's not a small gap, that's a massive one. And it tells you everything about how Messi is wired as a footballer. He doesn't just want to score. He wants to create, to unlock a defense with one pass that nobody else on the pitch could even see. Ronaldo, on the other hand, has always been built as a pure goal machine first, a predator whose entire game revolves around getting into scoring positions and finishing with brutal efficiency, with playmaking sitting as a secondary skill rather than his primary weapon. Two completely different philosophies of greatness. And honestly, that's part of what makes this rivalry so fascinating, because you're not just comparing two players, you're comparing two entirely different definitions of what it means to dominate a football match. Now let's get into the details that really separate these two when you zoom in on specific skills, starting with free kicks. Ronaldo has spent years perfecting that knuckleball technique, the one where the ball dips and swerves in ways that seem to defy physics. And over his career, he has racked up a genuinely impressive free kick goal tally, often cited as one of the best direct free kick records in modern football. Messi, by contrast, was historically less reliable from free kicks in his earlier years. But here's the twist. In the later stages of his career, especially during his time at Barcelona and beyond, he transformed into one of the most dangerous free kick takers in the world, curling the ball around walls with a precision that honestly looks unfair. So while Ronaldo holds the edge here across the full career, Messi's evolution in this specific skill is one of the most underrated glow-ups in football history. Now think about penalties for a second, because this one is interesting too. Ronaldo has converted well over 100 career penalties, a number boosted partly by how frequently he's taken them across multiple clubs and multiple leagues. Messi's penalty tally sits lower, and interestingly, Messi has actually had a rockier penalty record at points in his career, including some high-profile misses that fans still remember. So on pure penalty volume, Ronaldo edges ahead again. But does volume always equal greatness? That's a question worth sitting with. Let's shift now to individual awards, because this is where things get emotional for fans on both sides. Messi holds the all-time record for Ballon d'Or wins with 8, a number that no other player in the history of the sport has come remotely close to matching. Ronaldo sits in second place all-time with 5 Ballon d'Or wins of his own, which is still an extraordinary achievement. But that 3-award gap between them has become one of the most cited pieces of evidence in the entire Messi versus Ronaldo debate. And here's where the analysis gets interesting, because Ballon d'Or voting isn't purely about stats. It's about team success, individual brilliance in specific seasons, media narrative, and even timing. Some of Ronaldo's most dominant individual seasons came in years where Messi simply had an even better one, and vice versa. It's not always the cleanest measure of who the better player truly is, but it is undeniably the most talked about number in this entire rivalry. Now let's talk trophies, because this is where the picture becomes genuinely complicated. Messi is regarded by most trackers as the more decorated player overall, once you add up league titles, domestic cups, and continental honors across his career, especially when you include his trophy-laden years at Barcelona. Ronaldo, however, holds the edge in Champions League titles, with 5 to his name compared to Messi's 4. And Ronaldo's Champions League goal tally, sitting north of 140 goals in that competition alone, is considered one of the most jaw-dropping individual records in the sport's history, a number many experts believe may never be broken. But then there's the trophy that changes everything for a lot of fans: the World Cup. Messi lifted the World Cup with Argentina in 2022, capping off arguably the greatest individual tournament performance in the history of the competition, and finally silencing the one criticism that had followed him his entire career. Ronaldo, despite representing Portugal across 6 World Cups and becoming the first men's player in history to score in that many editions, has never lifted the trophy himself. For a lot of fans, that single missing piece is the deciding factor in this entire debate. For others, it's simply one trophy in an otherwise unbelievably stacked international career that includes a European Championship win and multiple Nations League titles. So where does that leave us? 2 players, each with a case so strong that entire books have been written trying to settle it. Messi with the assists, the Ballon d'Ors, the World Cup, and a style of play so effortless it looks like he's playing a different sport entirely. Ronaldo with the raw goal count, the Champions League dominance, the free kicks, the penalties, and a level of physical longevity that borders on unbelievable. Both men rewired what fans expect from a footballer. And honestly, football is lucky that these two existed in the same generation, pushing each other to heights that neither one might have reached alone. But if you're asking me personally, and I know a lot of you are going to disagree with this, I'm leaning toward Ronaldo. Not because the trophy count is perfectly even, and not because I'm dismissing what Messi built, but because of what Ronaldo has done with sheer will. The goals, the records, the fact that he's still out there in his 40s scoring in a way that should be physically impossible at that age. That kind of relentless drive is something you can't measure with a stat sheet. Messi has the flair, the vision, the World Cup. But Ronaldo has that unmatched hunger that never once slowed down. And for me, that tips the scale just slightly in his favor. Now I want to hear from you, because this debate never really ends. It just evolves with every new season. Drop your pick in the comments, Messi or Ronaldo, and tell me the one stat that changed your mind while watching this. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you're subscribed here on Goal Verdict, because we've got more head-to-head comparisons and match predictions coming that you are not going to want to miss. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.